Welcome to this new episode of Women in Investing podcast, Champions with Chequebooks. Here we uncover the stories of women investors and share the valuable lessons they've learned. These insights benefit the entire investing ecosystem, including existing and potential founders as well as fellow investors. Our guest today is someone who grew up in a small city in India and now resides in the heart of global venture capital, the Silicon Valley. She went to Stanford with the ambition to build her own business. So how did she become an investor? Let's find out. Welcoming Chanchal Bhoorani, Vice President with WestBridge Capital. Thank you for joining us, Chanchal.
Thank you for having me, Sapna. Pleasure to be here.
Your story is quite fascinating. Please share your journey and how did you become an investor?
In life, I think even before professional career started in life, I've just always optimized for learning. And my mother used to say that whatever you learn never goes to waste. You eventually end up, using it directly or indirectly. And I think in professional life, I've tried to use the same mode. And that has led to me starting my career as a data analyst, moving to product analyst, and then being a product manager at Ola Cabs, leading some of their algorithmic products, but then going to a startup and leading the entire product team there. When I moved to Stanford, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, as you said. And I did start not one, but two companies while I was there. The first one was unfortunately a cross-border supply chain company just 3 months before COVID. And then, of course, we know how that panned out. And so we wrapped that up. And following that, I actually started working on an edtech idea, which was nonprofit. And I wanted to do that full time. But then reality hits when you're about to graduate and you realize that you don't have money, you're a broke student. And that's when I realized that I needed to first secure myself financially before I can take those kind of risks. And that's when I started thinking about, okay, so what am I going to do? Somehow WestBridge opportunity presented itself very organically. And I had the two options. Either I recruit for product roles in the Valley, which had been a dream for a while. I thought that if I won't be a founder, I would end up being an operator, do a product role in the Valley, likely in startups. But then surprisingly, the investor role came up, and it just seemed like I'll have a lot more learnings as an investor than as a product operator. And so I took the role. I've learned so much. I think most importantly, I've learned to have macro thinking. As a PM, I knew how to think about micro trends, but as an investor, I've learned to think about macro trends, look at a business overall, and a lot more stuff like that. So that's how I ended up going from wanting to be a founder to being an investor now.
Can you tell us also about your journey before Stanford? Because a lot of the roots of thinking about entrepreneurship, product thinking, etc., developed at that point of time. So tell us about on your Singapore journey and Una background and so on.
Yeah, I think so. I'd say I've had a fortunately, very good professional career in terms of growth. And I think a lot of that credit goes to people I found along the way. I think I've been lucky to have good mentors in not just one, but every role. They had Ola Cabs. I joined them as a product analyst. I wanted to move to product management. We didn't, because I was working with a PM. I really liked what he did. And sometimes I would shadow him, work as a pseudo product manager. And when I talked about wanting to be a PM, move to a PM role, there was no precedence. There was nobody there who had moved internally from a non-PM role to a PM role. No one without an MBA was a PM at the time. But I think I had good bosses and not just in my team, but parallel teams who were open to giving someone young, someone hungry a chance. And so I ended up joining the product team. And luckily, again, I was fortunate to get to work on some of the most critical products at the company at the time. So we were revamping our entire pricing algorithm, which was primarily rule-based. And from that, we were building our first ML algorithm at the time. And so I got to lead that. That was really fun to see. But I also realized while I spent about 2.5, 3 years at Ola, as the company grew, I had a lot of fun. I grew along with the company. But now as a PM, I actually had to write a PRD as the company grew. I could no longer sit with the developers in a room, brainstorm, and we go our ways and they know what to build. I had to write detailed PRDs, or I had to wait for the next sprint to bring up a new idea, which I think all of that was good for the company at the time at the scale. But I realized that I loved working in fast-paced environments. So it felt that things were slowing down for me personally. And so I ended up joining Zillingo, which was it was a Series B company, but the product was primarily done by the founders, and they were looking for first non-founding PM to build out the product team and a lot of other adjacent teams. And so, yeah, I ended up joining there. Fun year and a half of building international product. At the time, we were live in 3 geographies, 3 countries when I joined, and we launched 2 more. So that was really fun and exciting. We were a B2C company and we built out B2B product as well. So a lot of learnings along the way.
That's interesting, and it's a good segue to talk about how you are now a SaaS investor, given your experience in building products. Tell us more about the fund, your focus areas, what kind of founders can approach you.
I love to talk to founders, so I'm down to talk to anybody and everybody, whether you are a founder already or are thinking about starting a company. But as a fund and as part of the SaaS team at WestBridge, we focus on investing in companies that have US-India nexus, software companies, so founder building software for any geography, from any geography. But since we see that software market is largest in the US, we end up seeing most of the founders building for the US market. So that's why I say US-India nexus. India is a route we invest in only in companies that have nexus to India. So it could be companies that have founders who are of Indian origin, or founders, just company teams that are a large part of teams. And for companies, large part of teams are based in India. That works too. And if you're building software, any kind of software, AI or not, any industry, any vertical, that works. We are all ears. We're also very flexible in terms of size, company size or check size. We manage about $8 billion in AUM. It's an evergreen and crossover fund. So given just the size of the fund, we don't write very small chunks, but we can write anything from $10 million to a couple $100 million. So anything from Series A all the way to Series D, E, F, wherever you take that later to, and even public markets. But very opportunistically, we sometimes do public market investments too.
It's interesting in India, of course, global SaaS is a very strong, investment area. All the investors here are very focused on that. Now that you're in the valley, what do you think? How does being in the valley give you an edge, versus SaaS investors who are based in it?
It's hard to have an advantage based on just geography, especially in this post-COVID internet era, right? But I think there are 2 advantages of being in the valley. One is specific to valley, and I may be biased in saying this, but I do feel a lot of technology innovation is a lot more concentrated in the valley. It's not that it's not happening in other places. It's a lot more prominent. San Francisco is only 7 by 7 miles or even kilometers. AI, there's just a lot more people working on whatever the new technology is, be it AI now or crypto few years ago and other technology trends. I do feel like being close to the new technology innovation helps me stay ahead on the curve, know about the trends really quickly and as real time as possible. And the other advantage I think I get is not specific to the Valley, but more broadly being in the US, is that most of the software that's being built in the world is for the United States because it is the biggest market. And staying in the US helps me understand the user of that software a little bit better, and also the buyer, right? What kind of software people here prefer, what is the buyer mindset, etc. And finally, I think being in the US allows me to look at companies that are not only being built by founders with nexus to India, but also founders globally. And because if you're a founder sitting out of India building for the US market, you're going to be competing with all of those. So you're getting a sense of what the best in class looks like and where the real gap is really helpful. And I can compare the companies that I'm going to invest in with what the best in class looks like. And that helps me identify those companies quickly as well.
And, within Indian founders as well, there are 2 types of these founders. There could be some founders who've been already living in India, living in the US and working in the US for the last many years, and then they plan to start their SaaS business in the US. And then there are many who are living in India and then later on decide to move to the US or not, or just stay in the US and build a global SaaS business. So, what is the difference you've seen in those type of founders? And is there a preference of, have you seen trends of, one winning versus the other?
Yeah, hard to generalize because you see people on both sides. People have different skill set, be it here or on the other side. But I think one thing more generally, if I was to generalize the skill set or the behaviors, I feel like if you're building software from India and you've tried to sell or done your early sales to companies or customers in India, they drive a tough bargain. So you ask for a lot lower price than your worth or that customers in the US would be willing to pay. So I think being in the US, you just have a little bit better sense of how much really are people open to paying for software, right? It's just Indian companies don't pay for it. So you're really hesitant to ask for that kind of money. So we've seen Indian companies over and over again underprice themselves. I think one of the reasons could also be that some of the early large software companies like Zoho or Freshworks that came out of India, their value proposition was that they were more affordable option because the other incumbents in the market were more expensive, but doesn't mean that all Indian companies have to have that. We do have a lot of cost advantages, but that should just reflect in our free cash flow and not in the lower prices. Right. So I think that's one difference. And the other difference, I think, is generally, which is if you're closer to where the buyers are, you just know their taste in UX, UI a little bit better. You may understand the nuances of the problem a little bit better. And hence, we encourage all our founders, if they're selling software in the US, to come and spend a lot of time in the geography that they're selling to. And of course, being close to the buyer helps you with sales as well. But to answer the second part of your question, do we have a preference for one or the other? I think we don't discriminate based on that because we've seen some founders who are building from India have very good sense of what the buyers here are looking for. I'm not afraid of asking for the right price and all of that. So we try not to judge folks based on just where they're building from.
I think one of the other points I know you're very passionate about is, product-led growth and how Indian SaaS founders can invest more in that. Could you talk about that and what would be your advice to some of the founders based in India building for the US?
Yeah, this might be a little bit of contradictory opinion here. I feel and probably biased based on from coming from product background. Feel like when I started looking at software companies being built out of India, I had expected a lot more companies going via product-led growth route. Like, it's not the right option for everybody. If you're from day one selling to large enterprises, it's probably not the right thing for you to do. But we've seen a lot of software starts with selling to SMB or mid-market and then slowly make their way up to enterprise. When you are in that SMB and mid-market phase, I don't see a lot of Indian companies doing PLG. And I had expected that a lot more because one thing, when you're not in the geography, sales is not going to be your strongest suite, but we know how to build good products. So I just expected there to be better PLG. Maybe it comes down to not having a good sense of the UI UX that the customers are looking for and how people really buy software very quickly, even or the freedom that people have as an employee, I would have on the dollar value of which I can swipe my card for, right? So I don't know what really this is. Have been just not invested in building that muscle, maybe because the early companies that came out of India were more sales driven or inside sales driven at least. But I just wish and hope that Indian SaaS founder community picks up that muscle quickly.
Sure. When we look at the SaaS space, it just seems like there's so many companies building it, all the possible, areas. And so what are some of the gaps really? Where can potential founders thinking about building a software business, and where can they focus on? Since you're closer to the US, you would know where are the gaps.
I mean, you will get very different answers based on who you ask. And right now, AI is hot. So everyone's going to tell you, try to inject AI in any and every software. But I do feel that there is real opportunity in some sectors that have traditionally been underinvested. There's some sectors that, everybody focuses on because they're intuitive, they're easy to understand. So as a founder, you just know that a lot more people know that space. For example, we've seen sales and marketing software it's just such a crowded space because it's easier to understand, easy to build product for versus say a procurement or construction software. So building some of the vertical softwares or like construction or more horizontal software like procurement. Almost every company has a procurement department or at least one person doing it if they're not the dedicated department. But it's really, unless you're from the space, it's really hard to understand the nuance of it. And so a lot of founders just don't end up building. And it's not sexy. They are not sexy spaces to be building for. And so we see that they get a lot less attention from potential founders. And I think that's where a lot of opportunity lies today.
Okay. Since you invested in Series A plus stages, so you've seen a lot of 1 to 10 journey of founders. What are some of the top 2, 3 mistakes you've seen people making when they scale from 1 to 10?
Yeah, I think for people building from India for the US, I think the biggest mistake is just what I said earlier on, undervaluing your own software, the value. A lot of time, what you're competing with, the budget where your software is coming out of the cost people are saving on labor, right? If you're making anyone more productive, you're saving those many hours, and labor here is really expensive. So people are very open to sharing 10, 20% of the savings with you, but you won't get it unless you believe that you're worth it, your product is worth it, and go ask for it. I think that I would say is the biggest miss or gap we have right now.
Oh, okay. This brings us to the end of our podcast. We do this rapid fire session to get to know you better. Just a few questions, interesting, fun ones also. But I'll start with this one. What's your personal professional shout out? Anyone you want to call out as a mentor, as a champion, or a sponsor?
Oh, wow. Okay. As I said at the start of the podcast, I've been really lucky, both personally and professionally, to have had those mentors, starting from my mother to some of the teachers in my village who took the time to come home and ask my parents to send me to better schools in the town, to mentors, professors, their wives I found in college, and all the way to professional life. I think there's just so many people that we can spend hours just talking about them. So I think to all those people, I'm really grateful.
If you weren't an investor, you would be
a founder.
A book you read recently that you would want everyone to read?
So I don't read a lot of fiction, but I recently, on a friend's recommendation, read a book called The Midnight Library. It helped me with a lot of perspectives, and I would highly recommend everybody read that.
What's one fun fact that very few people know about?
Oh, I think so. I come up in a conversation as very extroverted, but people don't realize how introverted I am and how much I hate being in networking settings. I probably shouldn't be saying that as an investor, but I really am. It really is challenging for me to be in a networking event.
Sure. Okay. What's your favorite go-to Indian restaurant in the valley?
So it's an unpopular opinion, but I don't think there are good ones here, good Indian restaurants here. But there's a dosa place that recently opened up called Dosa Corner that I eat back right now. Well,
thank you so much. And I think we will share the location of that dosa corner in the show notes. And if there are any other, good reading materials, including related to PLG, to share with us, and we'll share the show notes with our viewers.
I'll do that.
But
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. With that, we are at the end of our episode. Thank you so much, Chanchal, for sharing your insights. And I know it's It's towards the end of your day there. Thank you for making the time and speaking with us today.
Of course, always a pleasure to chat with you.